Hi everyone, I am Daniel, and as Rick said, I've been a product manager for over 16 years now. I love science. I respect the scientific method, and I truly want to make decisions based on data over gut feel. Since I started as a PM, I have seen this more and more. Anyone seen this question? Yeah. It has increasingly become the default instrument for seeing whether we, as builders of technical products, are on track to achieve that thing that we are aiming for, creating and maximising value. And it seems almost too good to be true, but maybe it is true. I mean, many very smart, highly paid people all around the world have adopted NPS, the Net Promoter Score, as a primary measure for the well-being of their businesses, their brands, and their products. So they couldn't all be wrong, could they? Maybe it is that magic bullet that designers, product managers, engineers, marketers, and the C-suite can all rally around together and focus on to truly understand whether they are on track for designing and building the products, services, and brands as they should be designed and built. However, a little while back, I looked at this question and I also gazed deep into my soul. And I just felt like calling bullshit on the whole thing. But I did my very best to suppress my own cognitive biases, and I embarked on a personal journey of discovery to learn more about the Net Promoter Score. I started by looking at the history of NPS, and then I investigated how useful a tool it should be for people like us, people making products in technology. So this is Fred Reichheld, and he is not a lightweight. Essentially, he built his very impressive career on the subject of loyalty, mainly customer loyalty. He has been working for Bain forever, and as well as consulting, he's written a number of really pretty good books and a lot of articles about the subject of loyalty. So quickly, let's unpack this word loyalty that we sometimes use a bit cavalierly. Let's see what it really means. And let's ask Fred, because he is an expert. He says loyalty is the willingness of someone, a customer, an employee, a friend, to make an investment or personal sacrifice in order to strengthen a relationship. So this is really key, that if you are loyal, you are willing to give something of yourself in the service of this relationship that you have with this third party. Okay, so how does that actually factor into these things? His model is fundamentally that fostering loyalty is supremely important because it is one of the most cost-effective ways of promoting growth. Okay, the way I read it is, we deliver great products and experiences. That creates customer loyalty, this nebulous thing. But as a result of a customer being loyal, they're more likely to refer your company or your product to other people within their network. That means that those people are more likely to trial and adopt your product. And if you've got more people trialing and adopting your product, you reduce the average customer acquisition cost for your business. And that's gold, right? Then you've also got this nice feedback loop there as well, because the more people who trial your product, the more people you can deliver great products and experiences to. On the other hand, you've got your customer loyalty increasing customer retention. So because I am loyal, I am not just likely to put my reputation on the line by referring more of my friends, family, or colleagues to you, but I'm also putting myself on the line there, and I'm going to go, well, I'm not even going to look at other opportunities, other competitors. I'm going to vote with my dollars and keep buying your products, which means repeat purchases, which means an increase in customer lifetime value. On the other side, it reduces price elasticity. So what we're saying there is a customer is less sensitive to price if they're more loyal. And again, that's giving something of themselves there. I'm loyal, so even though someone's offering me a cheaper price, I'm going to stick with you. And as a result, I'm going to pay more, which means that the company can increase prices, which increases their gross profit, which again increases their customer lifetime value. So this all makes a lot of intuitive sense, right? And you end up with this virtuous cycle that acts as a multiplier for your marketing and your product investment spend. And all of this eventually leads to company growth, right? Makes perfect sense. On the one hand, we spend less money attracting new customers. On the other hand, we make more money out of the customers that we have attracted. Brilliant. So here's the thing. Our friend Fred, he went and wrote an article in the Harvard Business Review in 2003 called "The One Number You Need to Grow." And it's not a bad article at all. In a nutshell, it says that Reichheld had already established that companies with a heavier focus on fostering customer loyalty were more likely to be successful. The hypothesis that he wanted to test here, though, was that the existing methods that were already in place for measuring customer loyalty were over-engineered, they were overblown, there were too many of them, and they weren't as indicative of future growth, which was the key thing that he wanted to focus on. So he went and ran his own study, and his findings surprised even him. He found that a single question exhibited the highest level of correlation between that question, and actual customer purchase and referral behaviour, which he went and did his best to measure. And that question, there's no price, it's okay. It's this: how likely is it that you would recommend company X to a friend or colleague? The scale he used was 0 for not at all likely, and 10 being extremely likely, with 5, and this is important, being neutral. Okay. What he found was what he thought was a pretty convincing correlation between growth and a single number that he derived by splitting out customers that were giving you a 9 or a 10, that he called promoters, and those who gave you a 6 or below, which he called detractors. 7s or 8s, he called passives. They're happy enough, but not enough to actually advocate for you or be fiercely loyal. So he took the percentage of promoters, subtracted the detractors, and he called that calculation the net promoter score. And ta-da, we have a single question as a proxy indicator for loyalty. And therefore, it implies future company growth. Brilliant. So this was in the Harvard Business Review. A lot of CEOs read the Harvard Business Review. And NPS went gangbusters. Fred wrote a book. CEOs, execs, and consultants all around the world went NPS crazy. It was being measured everywhere, and it took on a kind of cult status. So all that seems great, right? Pretty exciting. But is it actually good science? Well, it feels like science, right? Because we use words like correlation and calculation and causation. There's probably some spreadsheet work involved there as well, so that tends to feel sciencey. But does it stand up to scrutiny? Well, even our friend Fred, in his groundbreaking article, said that NPS is, I quote, simply irrelevant in some industries, with him specifically calling out, and I kid you not, database software or computer systems. It It was also not predictive at all where a company was operating in monopoly or near monopoly conditions. And it's also worth noting that Reichheld looked at past growth when he did his work. So he didn't really look at future growth when he looked at NPS. So NPS, in theory, was actually modelled on predicting the past. But no one really talks about that very much. And how good is the correlation? Well, others have actually gone and tried to replicate Reichheld's work. And they've come to the conclusion that, yes, there is some correlation between NPS and company growth, but NPS is actually a better indicator of past or concurrent growth than it is of future growth. And according to one study, the one that I've called out here in the slide, it explained only about 38% of future growth. So that's something, but it's probably not enough to hang your business on. It's also worth noting that NPS is quite volatile. So a small shift in average sentiment can actually increase the NPS score dramatically, because if enough customers move through those arbitrary thresholds we talked about before, then NPS can change significantly. And lastly, there's a lot of variability in survey data that is just not captured by reporting on a single number. It's completely lost when we distill it to that single score. And let's have a look at that in a bit of depth. So here are two completely made up but plausible NPS profiles. As builders of technical products, if we assume that we are all true NPS believers, right? We love this. We think it's brilliant. What do we do with these profiles? Well, company A tells us that we have a big problem. Okay, a significant segment of our customers straight up hate us. Another segment loves us. Who are they? We don't know. Why haven't the haters left us yet? We don't know. How do we make the haters like us? Oh, we really don't know. Okay, one thing we might glean from this is that it's probably worth cutting the haters loose if we can. I mean, they're probably saying bad things about us to their friends, family, or colleagues. And they're also probably really expensive for us to service and support. And we probably wouldn't even bother trying to shift them, because even if we put a lot of resources into it and try and shift them 4 or 5 points up, according to the NPS, they're still detractors, and we haven't shifted our score at all. So why would we bother? Conversely, if we look at company B, we'd probably say it's not too unhealthy, right? But there is some room for improvement. There are a few haters, sure, but there are quite a lot of those people who are technically detractors, but, you know, we might be able to shift those. If we could just shift a few of those 6s to 7s and a few of those 8s to 9s, then we can get a significant shift in NPS. And of course, because this is totally made up data and I made it up, these two profiles are identical and they've both got an NPS of 0. But if that's all we looked at, we wouldn't get anything useful out of it. Company B definitely has more potential for improvement. Winning over a 6 is far more likely than winning over a 0, and they're far less likely to be assassinating us on social media, right? Okay, the science is a bit dubious, but perhaps it is at least being applied scientifically, right? Sometimes, but mostly, hell no. And here are some examples. So, people are still collecting NPS data based on touch points. We spoke about this before, or product features. Some call it eNPS, where the E stands for episode, so episode NPS, as opposed to eNPS, where the E stands for employee. Don't get me started. So, based on what we've already seen, it makes very little sense to try to measure this concept of loyalty based on a single touch point, right? On a single interaction. Now, some people are using it in an industry where it makes absolutely no sense. Here is an example of a local council in New Zealand implementing NPS. And I mean, good on them for trying to measure the satisfaction of their stakeholders, right? They want to be held accountable. They want to do a good job. But are people really ever going to be loyal to their local council? Are they going to recommend their local council to their friends? Can they just use another one if they don't like that one? What does growth even look like for a local council? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But the most insidious of these is the fact that many people within organisations are actually incentivised to improve their net promoter score because share prices are linked to future growth. So if we can show that our NPS has gone up, then we get our bonuses. And this results in bastardized NPS collection. And here are some I prepared earlier. So here's an NPS survey that I collected from a rideshare company who will remain nameless, but they might get me home tonight. Hands up who can see what's wrong with this one. Okay, we have one, yes. Yep, you got it. It is colour-coded for my convenience. So if I thought they'd done a reasonable job, and I want to give them a solid 8 out of 10, you got me home and I didn't get murdered, okay? Great. They're signalling to me that it's just not good enough, okay? That only a 9 or a 10 is going to be considered good. This is going to inflate their NPS, and any science that NPS might have held on to here has just gone out the window. But it can get worse. So here's an NPS survey from a well-known telco whose name I also won't mention. And this one is ingenious. Okay, see if you can spot the flaw. Let's run through the flow. So number 1, was I able to perform my intended task today? Yes, I was, thank you. So number 2 that pops up is a question that checks if using the website actually stopped you wasting valuable staff time, right? Fine. Fair enough, let's collect this data. Question 3 is the standard NPS 11-point scale. Okay, great, looks good. And it's followed by the standard qual question that we often see in a follow-up for NPS, which asks, what is the main reason you gave this score? Why? Justify yourself here, which most of the time will never be filled in because people can't be bothered. They already resent you. Okay, that's all fine. However, let's start the flow again. And this time, let's say, no, I wasn't able to perform my task today. Oh, well, look at that. Well, that is super helpful. As a user, they've noticed that, hey, here I am, a customer in distress. Let's see if they can turn me around. And there's a great big fat button for me to click. Great customer service. Oh, there's also another link there that I could click if I really wanted to, but it doesn't look too appealing. Okay, so who can spot the problem with this one? Hands up, come on. Give me some. There we go. Right. So I'm not actually suggesting that this unnamed telco is actually up to anything nefarious here. I will assume that they have the best intentions, okay? They see this as an opportunity to make the customer experience better in real time. Here's someone who has a problem, who signaled that to us, let's fix it now. But the bigger problem, of course, is that as a tool for measuring NPS, is that it subtly filters out those who were not satisfied because they couldn't get the job done in the first place, which introduces bias and it renders the whole damn thing invalid. So I'm not accusing anyone of bad intent here, but if NPS is a part of your executive remuneration structure, then you are asking for something like the examples that I just showed you. And in this last one, yep, it is part of their exec rem plan, and here is a letter to their shareholders where they proudly tell you that this is what they do, and they go into a whole lot of detail about how much a shift in NPS is linked to their remuneration. So if I was them, I'd also feel very incentivized to move NPS in the right direction, and I wouldn't be all that focused on how robust the science is. okay? Because no one's going to reward me for how robust the science is. But what does Fred think of all of this? Well, he is astonished. And he calls bullshit on it too. Selfish objectives. So, after all this, can NPS be a useful measure in our lines of work? Please, Daniel, say yes. Well, it might be better than not measuring anything at all, sure. And in some very specific cases, it can be useful, but even then, probably still not on its own. But let's look at some bright side, because a lot of us are already collecting NPS. We've already got this data coming into our systems, and it is a pretty good measure of a proxy for customer loyalty. So let's look at some genuinely great features of the Net Promoter Score. Number one, it is cheap to collect and analyze. And you get a high response rate because you're only asking customers a single question. So you get your data back really quickly. You can get a decent sized N that's going to convince people very quickly, right? It's easy to communicate to stakeholders because it's one number that you show them a graph of. And look, it's gone up, so give me my bonus. And it's well accepted in the community. So company boards and market analysts really like it. So yes, is that a reason to collect it? In the real world, kind of it can be, unfortunately. So if we're already collecting it, let's see what we can do to make the most out of it. So remember here that you are gauging loyalty. So first, think about whether loyalty even makes sense in your organization. But if it does, if you can make a case for that model I showed you earlier, then measure it more at the brand or at the company level or the major product level. Don't measure it at the feature level. It's not going to make any sense. You want to look more at longer term trends of NPS. Don't measure it daily, weekly, or even monthly is probably too often, right? Because you want to see how it changes over a long period, real longitudinal change. If you're employing a third party to collect NPS data for you, that's fantastic because then they might have, firstly, more robust methods. And secondly, they might have a broader reach of customers to talk to. They may be able to look at not just your customers, but your competitors. And then you might be able to look at comparative NPS. So, okay, my NPS is 20. What does that mean? Not much. But if my NPS is 20 and my competitors is 85, well, then there is some kind of gap there that maybe I can drill into. There's a clue for me to investigate. Do not go confusing it for a predictor of growth, okay? Or even as a measure of satisfaction, which a lot of people do, okay? It's not a measure of satisfaction. I can get NPS to go up massively by cutting my price by 90%. Yes, more people will say they'll recommend me. It's true, but that doesn't make my product any better. The most useful aspect, though, of NPS, even though I poo-pooed it a little earlier, is that qualitative question that we ask afterwards. There might be some clues, some little nuggets of gold here that will give us an idea of what's going well and what problems might be occurring. So here I am. I'm in this company. Daniel's told me a bit more about NPS. What do I do with this information? Should I use it or should I rage against it? That's hard for me to say. My take is that if your executive suite really wants NPS, then give them NPS. Seriously, I don't think this is the hill to die on, right? They may have compelling commercial, if not product reasons to collect NPS data, right? It might be worth them doing it for market analysts, okay? Even though that's bullshit. And yes, it is not a bad measure of customer loyalty if that is something that's worth measuring. So do it, but also don't let it ruin the flow within your product, right? Make sure you don't bug your customers with it too much. Don't have them resent you for asking the question all the time. And do your very best to make it as scientific as you possibly can. But also look at other simple measures that might make some sense here. One I like and that I've used quite extensively is customer satisfaction, or CSAT. Something that I'm sure some of you are already using. It's similar in style to NPS, I guess, and it has a lot of the same sorts of benefits, but it gives us more actionable insights because of the nature of the question that we're asking. We're really focusing on whether the product itself is doing its job. So here we might ask customers, how satisfied are you with X helping you to achieve Y? So this makes it really clear that we are asking about the product, not the brand, and the specific job that this product is supposed to be doing for the customer. Is it solving their problem? The qual follow-up question can be phrased a bit more like, what did you like about X? And where do you think we could do better? And that might even be split into two separate questions as well, prompting them to think about the positives as well as the negatives. This actually helps with engagement with the customer, with the respondent, I guess, and helping them feel that they have the opportunity to contribute in a productive way into the improvement of the product. The NPS version, what is the reason you gave this score, essentially is asking the respondent to justify the score they just gave you, right? That already puts them on the back foot and they're not going to fill it in, right? I already hate you. You really want me to tell you why I hate you? Or I've just said I like you. How creative do I have to be about how I like you, right? So we can use this question to invite customers to collaborate with us. Then, once you've collected this data, don't boil it down to just a single number, okay? Because that's going to hide some really important stuff. Look at the profile as a whole, look at the mean, median, mode, work out the standard deviation, look at measures like total percent satisfied versus total percent unsatisfied, build ratios, whatever you feel aligns best with your goals and whatever you see as your North Star. And then read as many of the qual responses as you possibly can. If you can't read them all and you've got the tools, run some semantic analysis on top of it, build a word cloud, something that will give you an idea of the kinds of patterns that might be lying within this unstructured data. If you can get some insight into why what is going on, maybe even correlate it with some behavioral data that you're collecting through your telemetry, right? That could also be really useful. Measure it against customer segmentation, right? See what you can do there that actually helps you get some answers or something actionable that helps you drill in further. But most importantly, follow up your surveys with actual conversations, if you have the ability to. People hate writing stuff in surveys, but they love talking about their problems to someone who looks like they're actively listening, someone who cares, and someone who might have the power to do something about it. They're also more likely to actually share their delights with you, right? They can get more animated and excited about how your product has saved them hours or saved them so much grueling, tedious work or has stopped them getting into some real trouble, right? They love telling those sorts of stories as well. So go out there, listen to your customers if you can to try and make your product better. You will get more mileage out of that than the much lauded and very often abused NPS. Thank you very much. I am Daniel Kinal. If what I have said today has stirred up some emotions in you, you can @ me here, or you can follow me on LinkedIn, or I'll be around. I'm very approachable and not creepy at all. Reach out any way you like. Thank you very much.